Put a finger down if you're shopping for a new e-reader and you want it to be under $200, really light and portable, your money going to a good company, you like to annotate, and you want something really cool and unique about your e-reader. Well, I have just the product for you, and I am so excited to tell you about it. Hi Slayers, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Eileen, the e-reader queen, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite e-readers of all time, the Kobo Clara Color. Now, I'm sure a lot of my friends will agree with this when I say I have a bit of an e-reader buying problem, and I may have 6 e-readers right now in my rotation, but this is the one that I reach for and bring with me the most. So I'm really excited to be talking to you about it because it has such a special place in my heart, and I just really want to tell everyone all about it. So today, that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna be going over all of the specs, the design, the ecosystem of Kobos, and comparing it to all the Kindles I own and all the Kobos I own at the end. And generally, I'm just going to be talking about if I think it's worth the money and if I think you should buy it. And spoiler alert by the title of this video, I definitely think you should. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the design. So, as you can see, it has a really small little design here. It is only 6 inches, which makes it super light and portable, which I love about it. As much as I love some of the chunkier e-readers in my ecosystem, sometimes it's just nice to put in a bag and to take with you wherever you want, knowing that it's really not going to take up any space. It's also super lightweight and made from recycled plastic, which is awesome. As you can see on the screen, it is not a flush design, so there is a bit of a lip here in between where the bezel and the screen goes, and there are some pros and cons to this. Some of the pros I've noticed is that it scratches a little bit less, and some of the cons are some dust can get in there, but I haven't had too much dust get in there, maybe a couple crumbs. I don't know, I'm pretty bad with my devices though, so let's just ignore that. The Kobo comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM, which I think is great. It can hold so many ebooks. It is waterproof, which is a pretty big pro. The power button is on the back, which is one of my favorite things about Kobos because my Kindles have the power button on the bottom, and I tend to read with my stomach pressing on the e-reader, and whenever I do that, it will turn off all my Kindles, but it never turns off my Kobos because the button's on the back, and it also charges through USB-C charging, which I think is super great and super modern and up to date. Call me Dr. Seuss. The battery life on this is super great. Apparently on the website it says it lasts up to 43 days, and I can pretty much attest to this because I've literally never had to plug it in since I opened it, and then finally it died on me the other day, and even though it was dead, I turned it back on and I was still able to read for another 15 minutes, so I feel like that's pretty cool, and the battery life is really good. You don't have to charge it for weeks at a time, and that's the same with a lot of different e-readers as well, but this one holds up to that standard and is super great. And personally, I love that about an e-reader because I am literally the world's most forgetful person, and none of my devices ever have any charge. Now, the last thing and most notable thing about the design is that yes, this e-reader does have color e-ink, which I think is so cool. I'm someone that used a black and white e-reader for 6 years, and of course most books are printed in black and white, but I just think the option to have color is literally so cool. Now, I need to warn you that color e-ink is definitely not the same as whatever we see on our iPads or our TVs or anywhere in real life. The color is a lot more muted and a lot more pastel looking, which personally I really like because it's easy on the eyes, it's nice and calming, and I really need that in my life, but it's definitely a much more muted experience, and that's just some of the limitations about e-ink devices, but it also is a lot easier on your eyes, so that is kind of the whole point of having an e-ink device. Now, obviously color e-ink is not necessary to read with, but I think it's a nice little touch, and if you're buying an e-reader, you might want to buy something that just constantly keeps you going back to reading on this device, and having color there does that for my brain. I just like to see it, it makes me happy. I like when I turn off my book and I can see the color cover because it reminds me of what it's like in real life, and I of course like to highlight in different colors whenever I'm reading a book, so particularly if it's a lovey passage, I'll highlight it in pink, or if it's something just normal, I'll highlight it in blue, or if it's something that I want to remember later, I'll highlight it in yellow. And I just like to make myself a little key system whenever I'm reading my books, just for fun, and sometimes I just highlight in whatever color I want, and I just like the way it looks, and it makes me feel like I'm actually taking a highlighter to a book page. That being said, I've used tons of e-readers that only are in black and white, but if I have the choice in front of me between my black and white e-readers and this color one, and the color one is just as good as the black and white ones, I'm just gonna pick the color one because I'm just a girl. Now, because it is a color screen, it is not the sharpest, most clear, crisp image that you'll ever see in your life. So, all of the black and white content on the Kobo Clara Color is displayed in 300 pixels per inch, which means it's pretty dense, it's pretty sharp. That's a good standard for e-ink devices. but all of the color is shown in 150 pixels per inch. So that's about half of what the black and white content is. Now, personally, while I know that this is not the best looking e-ink screen I've ever seen in my life, I've never been reading and felt like, wow, this looks bad, or this looks pixely, or this looks ugly. And honestly, if you never told me that there was any difference between the black and white and the color content, I'm not sure I would have noticed it. To me and my eyes that are not classically trained or anything, but I do have 20/20 vision, this is a really sharp screen and I have really no notes on it. If I really get up and close, maybe sometimes I can see a bit of a difference when comparing to other e-readers, but most people don't have multiple e-readers, and for most people this totally works fine, and it just looks like you're reading a book, which is what I like it for. Okay, now quickly I want to touch on how much this e-reader costs. So like I said before, this is a sub $200 e-reader, and it comes in just at about $160, which is a pretty medium range for e-readers. I'd say a cheap e-reader is about $100 or under $100, a medium e-reader is about $150, and then an expensive e-reader is really pushing $200. So I feel like this is a pretty fair price because it has pretty fair specs along the way. It's not trying to be the top of the line model, but it's also definitely not a base model and has some really cool and helpful features in it. So you might be asking, what are the more powerful features I'm speaking about? Well, let's go ahead and get into it. One of the first ones is the fact that it has warm light. So you have the option to not only adjust the brightness, but also to adjust how warm the light is. And you might be thinking to yourself that, hey, that sounds like a pretty standard feature. But if you ever looked at buying an Amazon Kindle Basic, you know that the Kindle Basic does not have any ability to adjust the warm light. So the fact that this device not only will show you color, but then you can adjust how warm the color is to your eyes is a pretty cool thing. Also, one of my favorite features about any Kobo in general is that you're able to swipe the brightness on the left side of the screen just by dragging up and down with your finger. And it makes it super easy, so whenever you're reading a book, you can just see the brightness change right before your eyes, and you don't have to open any other extraneous menus. Another thing that I like about this e-reader, and that kind of justifies the price as well, is the fact that there are no ads on the front of the screen. So whenever I buy any Kindles, including the Kindle Paperwhite, which is the same price as this device, it has ads on the front screen that display whatever Amazon wants to show. But Kobo doesn't do this at all, no matter what device you buy from them, so you never have to look at some random ads of some books that you're never gonna read or any Amazon promos again when you're looking at your book device. So the fact that it just doesn't come with ads is a great thing and really helps to distinguish it from competitors. I will note that on Amazon you can pay to change the ads and get them removed, but you have to pay, so. Now, something to note, if some of you have seen my video on the Kobo Libra color, you know that that device has compatibility with a stylus and you can actually annotate on top of the book. Now, this does not have that compatibility and you can't annotate directly on the book, but you can still highlight in different colors. And honestly, it's a little bit more of a simplistic way to annotate in your books if you're someone that prefers minimalism or gets a little bit overwhelmed by the thought of annotating on a book in general. Sometimes that happens to me and then I end up not taking any notes or any highlights at all. So it's kind of nice to just fix my annotation paralysis a little bit. Now, one of the other things I noticed is that this e-reader is fast. I'm someone that came from an older e-reader which was super slow and not always the best, especially when I was pressing menus or changing the page or changing the chapter. But this e-reader is so fast and so good at doing all of those things, and I really have no notes, even compared to the more expensive versions of the Kindle Colorsoft or the Kobo Libra Color. This feels just as fast as them, and I've used all of those devices. Now, some of the other features that I really like that are pretty standard across most e-readers, but are some of the reasons that I pick up e-readers instead of physical books, are that you can highlight, you can look up words or translate words really easily, you can add little notes through typing, and you can also track your progress in a bunch of different ways. So on the top and bottom, you can see how many pages are left in the chapter and how many pages are left in your book. Something unique to Kobo is it has a progress bar on the bottom that'll show you how much of the percent of the way you are through a book. And something else unique to Kobo is that you can see your stats from reading, which I really like. It'll show you how long it's taken you to complete a book and how many pages you had, and it shows you this on each device specifically. Okay, and then moving on to the Kobo ecosystem in general, there are a couple things that I really like about the Kobo ecosystem in all of the Kobos. So, The first thing is the integration with Overdrive. So this makes it really easy to borrow books from the library, and I love that Kobo supports this as a brand and that they're built into the e-readers. So you can sign up with your library card and then borrow ebooks directly from your library, and it'll show you the availability of them straight from your Kobo, so you don't have to use the Libby app on your phone, and you can just download it right there on your Kobo, and it's super, super fast and efficient. And I personally do this all the time, and I've been able to get some really popular books, which I love. Now, the other thing that is usually a pretty big point of contention between people who are looking at Kindles versus Kobos is that Kindles have Kindle Unlimited, which is a book subscription that you can pay for, and you can get a bunch of books and read it through there, but you have to return them after a certain amount. And the rebuttal to that is Kobo Plus, which is a very similar subscription that has a really good price range. I believe it's like $8 and then $10 if you want audiobooks and ebooks, which is what I personally use, and you can find some really cool indie authors on there. I'm not saying every single book is great on there, but I'm not saying that about Kindle Unlimited either. So it's cool if you get a Kobo that you still have the option to do a similar program. And then of course, one of the things that I really love about Kobo is that they give you the ability, once you've bought a book through the Kobo store, to download it and keep that with you no matter what. And you can remove the DRM, and so if you ever want to change e-readers in the future, you can load all the books you bought from Kobo onto that e-reader, or you can just have them for safekeeping, because in the digital space, you never know when something's going to go wrong with the cloud system, and sometimes it's nice to just have the books that you bought be backed up. So personally, I like that about Kobo, and I like that about Kobo as a brand. I totally get that not every purchase you have to make has to be about the ethics of brands, but in this case, I personally like it, and I like that I'm able to then have my books with me and not just floating around in the cloud forever. Okay, now we've reached the part of the video where I'm going to be comparing the Kobo Clara Color to every e-reader that I've used in the past and telling you why I reach for the Kobo Clara Color the most. So starting off strong with the Kobo Clara Color against the Kindle colorsoft. Now, the biggest reason you would get the Kobo Clara Color instead of the colorsoft is the price. There's a $120 difference. The Kobo Clara Color is $160 and the Kindle colorsoft is $279, which I think is bonkers for an e-reader. And yes, it has more storage and it has a better screen technically, but for an e-reader that is color and on a budget, this is basically the only option, and at that, it's a really good option. And sometimes it's just hard for me to justify spending $300 on an e-reader, especially when the Kindle colorsoft has known issues about yellow banding, and my personal device that I bought and returned had that issue, and it was annoying to spend that much money on a device and realize it has a defect. And on top of that, I would be supporting Amazon pretty heavily, and I could only buy my books through Amazon, which meant I couldn't download them at all. So yeah, I chose the Kobo Clara Color instead. There's a huge price difference, and the Kobo Clara Color really holds up even with some of the things that it's lacking. It's really still a very powerful device. Okay, now let's compare the Kobo Clara Color to the Kindle Paperwhite. Now, both of these devices are $160, but the reason I pick up the Kobo Clara Color is because the Paperwhite is, of course, in black and white. It also natively comes with ads, and I didn't pay the extra to get rid of the ads, so my lock screen is always an Amazon ad, which I find pretty annoying. And of course, it's supporting Amazon, but we could say that about all the Kindles. The other big difference, I think, between the two is that the Paperwhite has a bigger screen and a flush screen, so you really miss, like, the real estate of reading. Maybe the Paperwhite is better for you, but personally, I really like to have a portable, small device to carry around with me and just throw in my pocket, throw in my bag, and I don't mind the extra inch missing. And I really like that about the Kobo Clara Color, that it's really portable. And then the Kobo Clara Color compared to the Kindle Basic. Now, the Kindle Basic is only $110, whereas the Kobo Clara Color is $160. So there is a pretty big price difference there, but the Kobo Clara Color has a warm light feature, which the Kindle Basic does not. The Kobo Clara Color is waterproof, where the Kindle Basic is not waterproof. And of course, the Kobo Clara Color does not have ads. Okay, and then comparing the Kobo Clara Color to all of the Kobos I've used, the Kobo Clara Color versus the Kobo Clara Black and White. Now, these devices are very, very parallel to each other. They're basically the same device, but one of them is color and one of them is black and white. So The black and white one is $20 cheaper than the color one, which makes sense because the color one has color, but really $20 is not a huge price difference for getting a whole thing of color. So if color's important to you, or even if it's not super important to you, but you think it might be nice and fun for yourself, I feel like a $20 difference is not a bad jump. And I like that it makes the Kobo Clara color unique whenever I'm reading on it versus every other e-reader I own, which is pretty much black and white. That being said, the Kobo Clara black and white is a great device, and it does technically have a better screen on it. So it's 300 pixels per inch on the entire screen. There's no discrepancy because there's no color, so it's a really good screen, super crisp, super sharp, and it has all the same specs as the Kobo Clara color, and it's cheaper. So that one's pretty much a toss-up, but personally I reach for the Kobo Clara color because I like color. And even though I don't use the color a ton, I'm not saying it's necessary, it's just nice whenever I want there to be color, there is color. Especially if you're someone that likes to read picture books or graphic novels, I think it's really cool. And then the Kobo Clara color compared to the Kobo Libra color. Now there's a pretty big price difference here as well, about $120. So if you're someone that is not super dead set on wanting to annotate in their books, I feel like the Kobo Clara color is perfect for that. You don't need a stylus. It's a lot thinner and a lot lighter. So it's really my go-to e-reader, even though I love the Kobo Libra color. This is a go-to e-reader, it's portable, and it's light in your hand. That being said, the Kobo Libra color is the top of the line Kobo color model, so it does have more storage and it does have access to Google Drive instead of having to plug in your e-reader to download books. But those are really not super huge trade-offs. And on a very personal note, if you were to ask me what my favorite e-reader was that I own, I would say the Kobo Libra color because I like to annotate all my books. But if you were to ask me what's the e-reader I actually read the most on, it would be the Kobo Clara color, because it's the one that is light and portable and I can throw in my bag without a second thought. I don't feel guilty for taking it around with me because it's super, super small, and I feel like it's a lot more acceptable in a social setting to pull out a small e-reader than like a giant e-reader. Okay. I know that was a lot of information that I threw at you about e-readers, but in the simplest terms possible, the Kobo Clara color is a great deal. It's only $160, which is pretty medium for the range of e-readers, and it has a lot of the more premium features that you can't find on a lot of other devices. For one, it has color, which is not seen in the Amazon lineup until you hit $279. And of course, it has a warm light feature, it's waterproof, it has 16 gigabytes of storage, it has tons of battery life, and it has no ads on it. So I really think that the Kobo Clara color is honestly one of the most perfect balanced e-readers for the budget and for who it's serving. If you're someone that just wants to read books and you want to be able to take your books with you and make it more accessible, this is a great e-reader for you. If you're someone that loves to read graphic novels or loves to highlight in their books or just likes to see color, then this is for you. I'm not saying that it's absolutely necessary, and I think there's a lot of other really good black and white e-readers out there, but for color e-readers, this is pretty much the cheapest one I can find. And I really feel like the user experience when using this device is amazing. This is a really good deal and a really fun device that will keep you engaged with your reading, and something that I think surpasses the value of most of the Kindle lineup and is something that I reach for all of the time. So that being said, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and let me know if you have any questions about the Kobo Clara color or if you've bought one yourself, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye!